Welcome to Will's Personal Development Show. My name is Will, and in this podcast episode, we are going to be covering 10 rules from Kevin Hart on success. Now, these tips come straight from the book I Can't Make This Up by Kevin Hart. So it comes straight from the source, from the person himself. If you're not familiar with Kevin Hart, you're probably living under a rock. But just as a refresher, he came out of nowhere and in a few years became one of the highest paid comedians of all time and one of the most recognizable actors, celebrities, and so forth. One of the most followed people on Instagram, too, at 104 million followers as of this recording. He and Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson have kind of teamed up over the years, and they've both amassed massive followings, almost beyond belief. So it's fascinating to see him do this, given his background and his profession as a comedian turned actor. It's something that we don't always see that pathway come up so often. So how did he succeed? How did he achieve his greatness? I set out to learn some of these things by basically reading his book. His book is basically a memoir about his life. So it's basically accounts everything from his childhood all the way until the present day in a concise way. And he even, he really makes a point to make sure to sprinkle it with very clear and obvious tips for success throughout. It was very intentional, which I did like, because some memoirs, and I've read a lot of them, they're just kind of like rambling about their life, and then you have to draw your own conclusions or lessons, which may not even exist to begin with. So, without further ado, let's just get into it. So the first lesson I learned, and this is something I learned from most biographies, to be honest, it's that basically these people are not flawless, perfect, godlike beings. They have their human issues and flaws, and for Kevin made plenty of mistakes. I think there's a lot of mistakes that you can point out, but I think the biggest one was when he went into a massive amount of debt. So basically, he, later in his life, he started to try and audition in Hollywood and stuff. And eventually he hit something that made him a decent amount of money. We're not talking a lot, but a decent amount. It took him a while. And the thing is, immediately he just spent it all. And the issue with that is, like, if you don't pay the tax man, and if you're just going crazy with your lifestyle and your money, which is a natural reaction if no one educates you on financial wisdom, then you're screwed when the IRS comes for you. And on top of that, he definitely had a kind of fun-filled lifestyle at that point in his life, where he was just kind of like, hooking up and partying, and then rationalizing that it was for networking and work, but it really wasn't, and everyone else in Hollywood was doing the same thing. So that was a big thing as well. So I'm going to kind of read you a little bit of a paraphrase quote by him. He says, the greatest lesson he's learned is humility. Nothing in life is certain. You can be rich and successful in one moment and poor or dead the next, even if you did all the right things. His TV show and film bombed, and no one in Hollywood would touch him. And then another moment, he had a multiple six-figure bank account, and the next, he couldn't get a gig anymore. And then he ended up returning to stand-up comedy on the road because he would rather do that than sit there with no opportunities in Hollywood. So you should measure yourself by the effort you put in, not the end result because we all end up dead. I think this is a deep lesson, and it goes beyond just humility, but to the, I guess you can call it almost uncontrolled, chaotic nature of life circumstance. Now, of course, there's a certain amount of control in what you do and the work effort you put in, but some things are just out of your control. And another lesson I'd like to draw from that is the fact that he is old, and I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that in a educational way, in a way that compliments him. And let me explain. Explain. He leveraged time. You see him now and you think, man, that guy, he looks so young. He looks so successful. I'm already fill in the blank age. It's too late for me. Or, I've already invested 2 years in Hollywood auditioning and it's not working out. When you actually look at his life, I mean, a whole decade went through where he was just kind of bumbling along up and down, gets a TV gig and then that gig gets canceled, and then, he's trying to make it in Hollywood, that doesn't work out, and he's still not, the Kevin Hart we know of today. So, even if you fail for 10 years at something, doesn't necessarily mean you're out of the game. It doesn't even mean that you're not gonna succeed like this, like a superstar like Kevin. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that's a guarantee either, or a high chance. Maybe he was a outlier or once in a lifetime, lucky situation type of guy. But regardless, I think there's so many lessons in that just one phrase. But I guess the first lesson would be humility, and then the second lesson is to really measure yourself on the effort you put in rather than the result. And that's something I apply to my fitness routine I have for a while now. I truly believed deep down in my heart, I've been going to CrossFit classes for almost 4 years now, almost 5. It's about 4.5. And I have been in many classes where I truly felt deep down I put in the most effort that workout or that class. Because you're working out with other people, so you can kind of see and they kind of help you and cheer you on. And I just knew deep down I put in more work. I suffered more. I pushed more. I was usually never the first or second or third person to finish the workout. And some people tend to measure it off speed or how much weight you could lift. But, if you can't really compare in that way because people have different genetics and have different starting points. So I always believed that the best starting point for me was, or the best measuring stick was just the amount of effort and consistency I put in. And that doesn't mean I always go full throttle because you don't want to burn out your nervous system and because you're going to go be in the gym the next day. But there's been definitely a few classes where I more than definitely put in my workload. So let's move on to the third lesson from Kevin Hart. Even experts can be wrong. Sometimes even experts can tell you that you cannot succeed, and they're wrong. An established comic back in the day called Lucien told Kevin after a set that he should give up because he doesn't have the talent. And of course, he didn't give up, realized that things take time, and kept working on himself. And, I mean, you know the story now. Lucien was wrong. And he wasn't just wrong about Kevin. He was wrong about someone else. He told this other person that he was too white. And that person ended up becoming one of the most famous comics of the 80s. I can't remember the guy's name. He wasn't that famous to me, but still a great lesson to be learned. I think, the takeaway for me there, and I'm referencing this with my other experience in studying successful people. It's not that you should just blindly ignore everyone telling you that you're gonna fail, you're gonna never make it, so just give up. It's just knowing that there's a chance that no one really knows, and you should keep going. Because sometimes they're right, but sometimes they're wrong. And no one knows. Just because you're the greatest comic of this era and you're a so-called expert and you've succeeded doesn't mean that you're good at judging or assessing other people and telling who will succeed or who won't. And so, you don't, I think I like to put a stick in the fire always, because you never know, It's kind of like how I put out content. You never know if it will work or not. If it doesn't, then, no harm, no loss. But I'll continue to do this, and maybe I'll, make it to my dream of like being a really successful personal development brand and interviewing all these successful people and so forth, and achieve my dream of kind of being like the next Ellen DeGeneres. And if it doesn't happen, oh well, it's really a side hobby, so there's really not much lost because I enjoy it. And then, by not listening to people who tell me, oh, you'll never succeed, I keep that percentage from 0% to maybe 1% or 2%. And that may just be enough. I think the real takeaway there is not to take any dream that you fully believe in, that you want to accomplish one day, and turn it to 0%. Never do that, because you just never know, regardless of what anyone says. At the same time, I wouldn't completely discount everyone and just be oblivious. I think, maybe someone saying like, okay, this, you're not doing something right, may mean to switch it up, or that you need to improve your game. And Kevin did seem to do that, at least on some level, because he did improve his comedic skills, and he acknowledged that. So that's another thing, Okay, so that was rule 3 on Kevin's rules for success. So rule number 4 is passion. Do what you enjoy to find out what it is, and don't overthink it. I think what he's saying here is, do what you enjoy, and that's a great way of finding your passion. Everyone always talks about, how do you find your passion? How do you know what you love doing? And the real question behind that question is, how do I find something I really enjoy to do for a living that makes me a good enough amount of money? And the answer to that is, at least according to Kevin, is a great way of doing that is just to keep doing what you enjoy. You already have stuff you enjoy, and you just keep doing it. You keep doing it, and you'll know in your heart that that's something you're passionate about. I think it kind of excludes, other passions that you haven't stumbled across. So I would add to it myself to just kind of test and taste different things that you find possibly interesting, and research. There may be weird hobbies and skills you never heard of on some other country or planet or club or area of your city, and that could take something else. He also says don't overthink. Don't overthink it. That's an interesting one for me too, because I definitely there was a time where I definitely overthought it. I drew Venn diagrams. I read all these books about it. Took in a lot of bad advice, good advice, in between advice, and so ultimately, don't overthink it. It's not about crunching these numbers and some math equation will just spit out the answer one day. It's not how it works. Okay, so that was number 4. The 5th rule for success is every struggle is a lesson preparing you for the future, even if you don't appreciate it at the moment. So this is a common type of principle or theme in certain personal development and kind of get rich advice that you might read from financial books and stuff like that. Um, the biggest one that comes to mind is Rich. It's called. It's a very famous book by Napoleon Hill, and it's called Think and Grow Rich. It sold millions of copies, made many people into millionaires. And one of the ideas in the book is that behind every struggle is a equal or greater opportunity. When I heard this a few years ago, I struggled with accepting it or trying to spin it, because there's many situations where I'm just like, how is this even close to an opportunity? There were moments where I was struggling so hard to find a job, and the weeks turned into months, and it was so dark, and it's like, how is this even close to an opportunity? And without a job, I can't, bring myself to enjoy life. I started to feel guilty even if I went to the gym, if I did something fun, because I could be spending that time looking for a job. It was a mess. But Kevin's saying that your greatest growth comes in the time of most struggle. Sometimes the best motivation is proving others wrong. Some of his friends and brothers told him he wasn't cut out to be a comedian. It's easier said than done, and I think it's so, when you're in that dark moment, it's so hard to really accept this. And it's easy to just say, well, it's easy for Kevin to say, he's doing so well now and yada, yada, yada. But no one can deny that, if you're always winning and succeeding, you never really know what, a bad time is. And that makes you weak or unaccustomed to the struggle. And when it happens, you're going to be lost, you're going to be surprised, you're not going to be prepared. It's kind of like the spoiled child who never really experienced hard work, and unfortunately when they hit the real world, they're in for a big surprise. So if I had to say, if I learned anything through those dark times, I think one of them is that you definitely are worthy, and you have a lot of hidden, untapped potential in you, even if the world or the current situation, which may even last a couple years, is telling you, you're not worth it. And not to measure yourself too much on whether you have a job or not, or what type of job title you have right now, despite the society or your peers or other people telling you otherwise, because you never know. And I think I've grown and improved myself in many ways. I ended up getting a great job, and, all of a sudden, people valued me. And it was always there. I just didn't find the right match. So that's another big thing, I kept investing in myself, and even though it didn't line up then, it could line up in the future. And that taught me patience and looking into the far future. That was his fourth rule for success. His fifth rule is kind of a twofer. I'm going to bundle up two in one. The first is positivity. He says it's a secret for happiness, and you get what you give. It's simple, and I love it. And then the other one is have faith. So I'm bundling these together because, one, I want to get in more tips, but two, they kind of go hand in hand. Faith and positivity are more positive, feel good emotions, and so I think they really work together. For Kevin, he says, no matter how low you get or how dark it gets, have faith that you can get to the light, because there is always tomorrow. Kevin was feeling lower than low when no one told him to apply to college, and he missed a deadline. It was just one of those situations where, none of his friends really mentioned college to him, and he just kind of assumed that he just wasn't even aware of it. And that happens. Like, it may be shocking to maybe you or I, or certain people, because I guess everyone talks about college nowadays, but maybe back then in his area and in his situation, it didn't. And I could totally see that happening. There's definitely people I knew in college, in high school, who really never discussed college or really thought much about it. And so all of a sudden he was caught off guard and he missed the deadline. And he saw his friends go to all these awesome colleges, and then there was him. So that was a interesting thing. And I think it may seem a little feel good and a little too, positive and wishy-washy to some listeners, but think about it. It's not just about, it's feel good and it's a nice quote to put on the Instagram to stay positive and have faith. It gets you to the next day, and then the next day after that. And each day, you never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to change, especially if you're putting yourself out there. If life were to just completely be demolished for me and I had nothing, if I try to network and talk to one new person a day, one new entrepreneur, which nowadays you have access to it through Instagram DMs, LinkedIn messages, you just never know. Maybe one person will open the door. Maybe you talk to a director of esports one day, and then a CEO of a tech company the next, and then you talk to a director of an investment firm the next, and one of those things hits, and they actually see a light in you and give you a chance. Well, then all of a sudden you're off to the races. You never know if you actually try, and if you're not trying, your chances are 0%. So I really like that. In terms of the whole positivity thing, he thinks it's the secret to happiness. He thinks, the more positivity you give, the more you get. Some people might think of it as just like a throwaway word or, just a fun thing to say. But to me, I've just always felt better when I'm around positive people, saying positive things, lifting others up, supporting them. Then I'm around negative people who are just filled with resentment, tearing others down. So if nothing else, I think it makes you feel better and you grow from it. So Kevin's rule number 6 is a business lesson. Effective communication is one of the most important lessons he learned in business. He pissed off a manager by not mentioning he was giving discounts when handing out flyers. Kevin had a huge head start by promoting his comedy on Facebook and Twitter before others. He hired a whole team he couldn't afford to help him, but the team increased his profit. A team will survive better than an individual. So that was kind of like a couple lessons bundled into one. The first one, of course, was that effective communication is one of the most important lessons he learned in business. So you got to be able to communicate effectively. It's easier said than done. A lot of people think they communicate effectively, but they don't. Can you concisely deliver your message clearly in an understandable way? Probably not as much as you think. There's a lot of people use uhs, ums. They ramble. They say something in 50 sentences that can be said in one. As far as the whole discounts, the flyers things, I think, that was an example of him messing up. He basically tried to give out flyers and give out all these discounts to his, show attendees without telling his managers. And that was a bad miscommunication. So keep that in mind. And then in terms of, how he got his start, he was a good marketer. He used social media before other people ever really did. So that was tip number 6. His 7th rule on success is commitment. If you make a promise or commitment to work or be someone, keep it. So this sounds simple, and it might be something that people unfortunately breeze over, and that's a huge mistake. It's usually the things that people breeze over that usually cost them the most. um, when you think about it, there's certain small things anyone can do, whether you're talented or not, that gives you a clear and noticeable edge towards any employer. And one of those is showing up on time. I can't tell you how many people I know who show up late. I've been guilty of it, and I've made a lot of focus and effort to fix that. And then another is keeping a promise, keeping a commitment. If you tell someone that you're going to show up somewhere and get something done by a certain date, you get it done. Obviously, there's certain, exceptions to the rule. I know Gary Vaynerchuk, the entrepreneur, he's mentioned he sometimes juggles 23 different hats, and he drops a couple, and he's okay with that. But in general, I think it pays off. People notice that. So that was tip number 7. We're almost to the end here. Tip number 8 is treat each moment like a seed for the future. Here we go back into kind of planting seeds for the future. Most people just kind of think for today, but Kevin says the man you treat well today can become a studio executive in 10 years, and remember how you treated him. I've heard this so many times from people in the entertainment industry, and there's different, phrases for it. Samuel Jackson, I took his masterclass at masterclass.com. By the way, if you want to check out masterclass, go through my link, willyoulaugh.com/masterclass. It might get you a little discount, but basically, he said the same thing. The people you step on today are the people who are attached to the people who will become your boss in the future. And after I heard this a few times and just kind of let it glaze through. But did I really let it change my behavior? No, and I should have. I should have gotten at least nicer. Sometimes I'm just kind of neutral to a lot of people, a lot of peers and coworkers. But how can I be nicer? How can I be more awesome to anyone? And is there anyone that I'm just treating like nothing, or I'm not getting to know? There probably are. I was just thinking this earlier today how there's a couple people that I've known for a while at my gym that I really haven't gotten to know. I haven't got to know their names, who they are, and talk to them. And maybe I should. Maybe I shouldn't. I don't know. But it gets you thinking, and it's about action rather than just reading these tips and never doing anything about them. Okay, rule 9. We're almost there. Complaining and moping about a bad situation will change nothing. His dad taught him that if getting chased by a knife is okay, then losing his TV show was okay. Sounds kind of weird, right? But, in his childhood, he was chased by a knife by his family, I believe. And so, that just became normal to him. And so when he lost his TV show, which I think it made it to the pilot episode, and he thought it was a shoe-in to continue, it got pulled under the rug from him. I think he flew in like most of his family and extended family for the announcement and pilot episode. And everyone was shocked when it got canceled. So, just think about that. Studio executives called Kevin to consider having him in television. His manager helped him get a bidding war started between them until it ended with a $250,000 deal, where they held him for a set time and cast him in roles they think would be a good fit. And so, things just sometimes don't work out. And of course, at that time, he wasn't as developed as he was now, so he complained, he moped, he thought the world was over, he was upset, he whined. But that really doesn't do you any good. It's not going to change anything. And he was in a hole because he spent that money fast and furious. He spent it on nice furniture and items. And he used a credit card, which didn't let him see visually how much he was spending. So he overspent, and that credit card was like a magic card that ultimately cost him a lot. So it gets me thinking. I think everyone, no matter what race, ethnicity you are, I'm Chinese, but I have these same tendencies to whine and complain and get very negative, and I have spent years trying to get rid of that, and it's a very slow process of rewiring your brain, but you make progress. And I'm not gonna lie, I still complain sometimes in my head. Usually, I don't let it get out into words often, but it's intentional that I'm working on it, which most people aren't. And I think at least that moves me in the right direction. It moves me away from feeling negative and beating myself up and not improving to action. Okay, you've complained. Now, what are you going to do about it? Okay, now the 10th and final rule for success. And if you want more of these tips, there's a lot more. I wrote a blog article with all my book notes and summary of the book. And you can find that on my website, willyoulaugh.com/Kevin-Hart. But the 10th lesson is when your plan doesn't work out, that's a sign there's a bigger plan for you. Now, notice how a lot of these tips kind of fall under the same category of failure, of things not working out right now. And I guess this was just a central theme to Kevin Hart's life. I don't know. But he talked a lot about this too. He said, plans don't always work out because there are other people with plans that may oppose you. Only one team can win in a basketball game. Also, there are factors out of your control. So, he talked a lot about this, but I didn't think he talked enough about this. He mostly gave a few of these direct tips and then went into his story mode. I think what I took out of it was that he really had many moments in his life where things weren't necessarily working out. First, in school, he wasn't a great student. He wasn't athletic. He wasn't nothing. He wasn't good with girls. That was pretty relatable to me. And at the same time, it was an unfortunate time of his life. But you never know where you go from there. So even though it wasn't working out then, it helped him develop his humor because that's all he had to fall back on. And from there, he failed to go to college, another big setup. And then after that, he slowly stumbled into stand-up comedy, and he did well in that for a while, and then he started to fail and not getting to some shows, or get told by some people that he wasn't good, or bombing sets on occasion, or not getting enough gigs. And that was another failure. Then he went to Hollywood, and there was an era then where he failed with getting good TV or film roles. So that was another huge failure. And yet, when you look at the bigger picture and you see where he is now, and he has these major roles in these films, he's been on these major films, and you see where he came from, you're like, wow, okay, maybe there was a bigger plan for him, and maybe it's okay that his plans didn't work out then, and that he wasn't the best all the time. And I think that was a huge lesson for me. His life was amazing to study because I don't know if it's just me. I don't think it is, but I think part of me always assumed, the people who were just all-stars in high school and middle school and elementary school, they're going to continue to be superstars throughout their life, and I'm just going to be average. And I definitely saw that and believed that, because I remember there's definitely a bunch of popular kids in my school who were good looking, they were popular, they were well dressed, they were athletic, they were part of sports teams. Some of them could even play instruments, and they got straight A's in the advanced placement GT gifted and talented courses as well. And I'm just like, man, those superstars are gonna, become astronauts and presidents one day, and I'm just little me just trying to get by. But you never know. Some of those people, they're rather average now, and that's okay. They're still great people. So you just never know what life has to throw at you. So I found that a great place to end that. I want to wrap up with my general thoughts on the book. And of course, check out my book summary if you want more details, because that's really valuable too, because I have a lot more tips from the book there. But I think in general, the book really just kind of opened my eyes to who Kevin Hart really was. I think there's always a tendency for me going into this book just thinking, oh, well, his life wasn't that bad. He probably, maybe he took him 2 years to struggle, but then he just hit Hollywood hard, hit it out of the gate, and now he's this massive multimillionaire worth $100 million in net worth, and his life is grand. And he's just super skilled and super amazing at comedy and acting. And that's not necessarily the case, Turns out, he had his struggles, and he was more relatable than I thought in certain ways. He wasn't this superstar. He like those popular kids I knew in high school. So you just never know. And I think people may come into a book. I know part of me came into a book just kind of skeptical or kind of dubious. And what I mean by that is I may have thoughts like, oh, well, he was a outlier. Most of those people, they stay stuck and broke and broken down and subpar. And, if you don't even get into college, then it's just downhill from there. And when you look at some of these life lessons in the book, they are common themes of successful people. The positivity, the persistence, the commitment. And yeah, he made a lot of mistakes. Maybe he was very frivolous with his money. Maybe he spent, wasted a lot of time partying when he could have been working harder. And, he's not as perfect or this hardworking machine. But, and maybe he did luck out and be that 1 in a million comedian who made it big. But at the end of the day, he has a lot of these life lessons that map with a lot of other people. And maybe not all of them map, but enough map to make you think. Maybe there's something there. Maybe he picked up these along the way or found them himself. Who knows? But they helped you. They've helped others. They've helped him. They've helped others. And maybe they can help you as well. And when you're talking about someone who earned $59 million in a year, you got to be able to take something from him that you can use for your own life. I want to end with a bonus tip. Kevin says the secret to life is to have fun. The fun guys always has people, including girls, who want to hang around him because he makes even boring stuff fun. And I always kind of saw that. I always saw the fun guy, get the attention. And sometimes it's not about the attention. That's a new layer of it that I've learned. It's not about being fun to get validation or to get attention of the girls. It's about having fun to have fun. And having fun doesn't mean necessarily drugs or alcohol or partying or ruining your life, or stuff that you can't achieve, like getting dates with girls or whatnot. Having fun can be anything that you deem fun, regardless of what others think. If you think Dungeons and Dragons and Star Trek and anime are super fun, then let that be. And no one else can tell you otherwise. So there's that. I think it's an incredible thing. It's also kind of reminiscent of Steve Aoki, another very successful DJ with similar beginnings. And when you think about it, they all kind of started off freelancing. Steve Aoki did it with DJing. Kevin did it with traveling the country, uh, doing stand-up comedy. And they both started charging very little for it, just trying to putting themselves out there. And at the time, you might just think it's never going to lead to anything. I'm just going to make this amount for the rest of my life. But if you keep improving and you keep compounding that growth and you keep putting yourself out there, trying new stuff, hiring a team, it can grow into something maybe beyond your wildest dreams. And, I'm thinking about what I'm doing now and I'm like, I don't know if it's really going to turn into anything. I feel like certain fields like comedy and DJing and music have much more potential growth than online marketing and blogging and podcasting, right? But maybe not. I don't know. You just never know. And I guess that's the lesson. Just keep plugging away. So hopefully this helped. Oh yeah, and if you found this useful, the biggest gift you can give for me that would take you 2 seconds right now is to leave a rating on Apple Podcasts for this podcast, Will's Personal Development Show. It's the if you search that on Apple Podcasts, it's the one with the picture of the apple with a mustache. That would be me. That would be my show. So I don't even want you to leave a review with like words and stuff, because that's going to take more of a time investment. All you need to do is leave a rating. And that's as simple as a click. A tap of the phone, really. It's a 1 to 5 star system. You get to decide how many stars I get. Preferably something good, but that's up to you. Thanks so much for listening. And if you leave that rating and you take a picture and you email me proof of that, once again, the contact information is on my site, willyoulaugh.com. But if you email me that, if you respond to any of my email newsletters and, attach the proof, I'm happy to give you a bonus gift. I haven't decided what that will be yet. I'm open to your suggestions. Maybe it's a video thank you message from me personally, or some other personalized thing like a personalized book recommendation from me based on your situation in life. I've read hundreds of books. Maybe I could find a good one. Or it's just like a 15-minute life coaching session. I don't know. But let me know. Give me your suggestions, and we'll go from there. So thanks so much. I'll see you in the next episode.